Bahrain, navigating between risks and opportunities. Making it in Bahrain, how some businesses do it. And hello and welcome to Money Mind. From 4,000-year-old forts to oil to financial services, Bahrain has it all. One thing it's also been experiencing, like its neighbors, is so-called Arab Springs. Now, while there has been unrest over the last year, the country has still been enjoying economic growth. In fact, latest stats show that GDP for the country grew by 3.2% in the fourth quarter of 2011, and GDP is expected at 4 to 5% for this year. And while the economy continues to grow and the government continues to roll out initiatives to stimulate investment and economic growth, is now the right time to invest in Bahrain? Well, I'm here in Manama to find out. Street demonstrations and political unrest have continued in the Kingdom of Bahrain more than a year after the February 14th uprising, which resulted in a number of deaths. And this has had an impact on the growth of the country, with GDP for 2011 coming in below 2% as compared to 4.5% the year before.
We are with a young democracy and a developing democracy, and in any country's journey, you go through some difficult times and some good times, and you learn your rights and your responsibilities. And I mean, we are essentially debating, nobody's debating the direction. Bahrain will become more democratic, more transparent. Government will be held more accountable. We will have more equality. Question is, how fast do we change? Some people want to move faster. Some people do not want to lose their culture and their heritage overnight. And it's finding this balance.
Bahrain, an archipelago of over 30 islands, has been making efforts to position itself as the gateway to the Gulf, opening the door to the trillion-dollar economies of the Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC countries. In fact, some estimate that the $1 trillion GCC economy will double by 2020. And Sheikh Mohammed says that Bahrain is focused on growing a number of industries, the financial sector being right on top of the list, as it accounts for roughly 25% of GDP.
So the financial sector is probably our largest sector linked to the global and regional economy. So in that sense, it is a bit out of our hands of where it's going. But nevertheless, the banks in this part of the world continue to do well, and that is growing. So, but for us, it is more diversification. So moving into the subcategories of finance, be it asset management or things like that. Downstream industry is another area we're looking at. There are a number of projects that are soon to be announced in the downstream aluminium area. We're continuing down that field. In the petrochemicals as well, there are a number of downstream and expansion projects. So be it in manufacturing or the services side, we have continued investment and development that we are expecting to see in the next couple of months.
But Bahrain's financial sector has suffered a blow. One of the kingdom's flagship companies, investment house Capita, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the United States in mid-March. The Central Bank of Bahrain says that it is closely monitoring developments and adds that many successful corporations have entered Chapter 11 and have re-emerged with good health. The regulator, however, recognizes the need for consolidation within the industry.
And we have been already working with the industry and specific institutions for consolidating their operations with others through mergers and acquisitions to enhance their financial positions going forward. That's the general idea of our strategy. But in terms of our specific regulatory focus or regulatory development focus, we have the Basel III project, which we have started about 2 years ago. We've done some quantitative impact assessment on the banks, and the result was positive. However, there are still areas that needs to be addressed, in going forward, and we are currently, working to establish working groups with the banks to address the issues that needs to be, handled going forward in terms of implementation dates, in terms of certain elements of the capital reforms as well as the liquidity reforms. The other issue is the implementation of the Islamic Financial Service Board. We have been over the past somehow selective in applying the standards for several reasons. I would say that that in majority part of the standards we are really partially compliant with these standards. Hopefully this year, by the end of this year, our plan is to be fully compliant with those standards applicable to the Islamic banks.
Banks in Bahrain are also looking at 3 major markets in Asia: Malaysia, Indonesia and Hong Kong. Expansionary growth in these markets being driven by Islamic banks. Bahrain's central bank says that there is much private wealth surrounding the kingdom that should not be underestimated, and that should boost sectors like private banking. To tap into this market, the Kingdom of Bahrain set up Tamkeen, an independent authority funded by the Labour Market Regulatory Authority to invest in manpower development and job creation.
In the past 5 years, Tamkeen have achieved quite a lot. Tamkeen have trained more than 25,000 Bahrainis to get professional qualification or get a certificate or get some other sort of needed qualification. Tamkeen also helped something like 18,000 business owners in Bahrain, which is very close to 1/3 of the active commercial registration in Bahrain. So over the past 5 years or so, Tamkeen have been having a remarkable effect in the economy. The financial sector is one of the big areas we're working in. We have something like 750 Bahrainis have gone through the program.
Besides financial services, Bahrain is also banking on its reputation as a venue for staging international events such as the Grand Prix. This year's F1 in Bahrain is expected to attract around 100,000 spectators over the course of the 3-day race. This year's race particularly important after the cancellation of the 2011 race following civil unrest. Now, the race is not only important for its economic contributions, but also as a symbol that Bahrain is back in business. And the chief executive of Bahrain International Circuit says the race is expected to lift Bahrain's GDP by about 3% for the week it's in action. Is the unrest that happened and has been happening over the last year or so, what impact has this had on the race?
Well, obviously for us, the loss of the race was a big impact on the Kingdom of Bahrain. The economic impact that the country benefits is huge. It's in the millions of dollars, about $200+ million. And so the impact of losing the race, I think that's the biggest element, is that we've lost that income. And that's why it's so important for us to bring the race back, because the country benefits, and not only benefits, the hotels benefit, the taxi drivers benefit, on all levels.
The organizers say that during its best ever year, Bahrain enjoyed a direct economic impact of $232 million from the F1 race. And in 2010, the worst year, it was 134 million. And this year, Bahrain International Circuit is hopeful that the number will speed past that $230 million figure. Up next, whether it's baking bread, renting out apartments, or organizing exhibitions, Singapore companies are thriving in Bahrain. Bahrain. It's not one of the preferred overseas markets that a typical Singapore company might venture into, and is seen as out of the comfort zone for many of them. But Singapore chain Bread Talk has been baking in Bahrain since 2009, providing the local market with healthy and sweet localized alternatives. The move to market came from Bahraini businessman Mohammed Juman, who bought the master franchise for Bread Talk across the whole of the GCC, with the main base for operations in Bahrain.
We had huge support from people like the ministries in Bahrain, because whenever we went to them with an international brand, they would give us a lot of their time and listen to us and fine-tune and advise us on how best we are, basically we can make sure of the local laws to support our brand. For example, just to give you ideas that, basically breads here had to have a specific shelf life.
In Bahrain, sales have been growing for Bread Talk at a rate of around 10% per year. And with faster than expected growth in the launch market, Bread Talk is positioning for aggressive expansion, rolling out in 3 countries a year for the next 4 years. Not to mention bringing to market another 3 franchises under Bread Talk, such as Toastbox and Food Republic.
Well, we've started off with Bahrain. The plan initially was for 3 countries. We've managed to go up to 4 countries right now. We've got Saudi Arabia in the pipeline in the very near future, opening up in Riyadh. Jordan has already opened up. Lebanon is coming in on the pipeline. We've got Qatar coming up, and some parts of the Middle East. Because of the political situation that's there, we've actually reduced our, basically push towards the opening. But you wouldn't believe that the interest has grown dramatically over this past year, which means that hopefully once the situation settles down, I think we're going to be looking at a much more aggressive expansion scheme.
Singapore property developer Frasers has also bitten off a chunk of the Bahrain pie, catering to tourists and businessmen who seek to roam Bahrain's seductive city streets, World Heritage sites, local delicacies and modern shopping malls. Fraser Suites opened here in Bahrain in 2010. And while occupancy rates did see a hit last year on the back of the unrest in the country, it's confident that rates will be back up to 75% within the year.
Last year, yes, of course, we have been affected with the event that has taken place. Well, this is behind us. We had a few months, yes, we were facing a lack of visitors to Bahrain due to the event, as I said before. But we have gone, I would say, from the 40s, 50s, reaching now 70% in a few months' time, which is a good sign, I think. So some companies that we have not seen during certain time are reappearing. So I'm confident about the future and business is picking up.
Frasers adds that competition in the market is picking up, with a number of 5- and 4-star hotels set to open in Bahrain in the coming year or so. And it too is planning expansion.
Middle East, so we have opened Bahrain, followed by Dubai and Doha. Next year, by the end of this year and beginning of next year, we will have 3 additional properties in Saudi, 2 in Riyadh, 1 in Al Khobar. We have also the project in Jeddah, Oman, and we are looking also for Kuwait.
Bahrain, with a population 1/5 that of Singapore's, is similar in geographical size and location. Sue Lin, the acting general manager of Pico, moved out to Bahrain from Singapore 10 years ago. And she says if you're looking for business opportunities, just think 2 decades back to what helped Singapore grow. Pico's business was affected by the unrest in Bahrain in 2011. But Sue adds that the government has been supportive in getting businesses back up and running. For example, this year's animal production show to encourage local farming attracted over 100 exhibitors from outside Bahrain.
I think what has happened on the whole region, well, can't really be sort of put under one nutshell or one banner, you know, because each country is quite different on its own, and Bahrain's situation is different from the other countries that have seen various uprisings and things. Every country has its own issues. Inevitably, when things or any sort of unrest happens in an area, you know, because we're in the events and exhibition business, so that tends to be affected first and foremost. But you know, we see a lot of initiative and push towards getting exhibitions back. You know, we had a good start to the year.
Members of the overseas business community that I spoke with in Bahrain said that developed infrastructure and the fact that the general business language is English smooths out the path for entering the market.